Good day, everyone. My name is Kate Lodin Saga. I will be going to report the assassination of Ninoy Aquino, 1986 snap election, and people power at EDSA. So, the assassination of Ninoy. If Marcos did not declare martial law in 1972, former Senator Benigno Ninoy Aquino Jr. might have become the next president. Instead, he was imprisoned and later he allowed to go to the US for medical treatment when he got very ill while in detention. In 1973, Marcos, stricken with lupus, was very sick and lack of vice president to succeed him posed a big problem in leadership. On August 21, Ninoy Aquino decided to return to the Philippines using an assumed name Marshal Bonifacio. He believed that he could be more useful to the opposition in the Philippines than in the US. Increased repression will only hasten the communist victory, he wrote his cousin, Senator Eva Estrada Calao, who was also a staunch Marcos critic and oppositionist. We must therefore exert every effort to convince Marcos that genuine return to democracy is the only sure path out of the enveloping red tide. He concluded. What happened to Ninoy Aquino upon his arrival shocked the whole nation and the rest of the countries that were closely monitoring the events in the Philippines. Ninoy was gunned down and fell on the airport in tarmac. The double murder at the Manila International Airport was later tried by a supposedly independent Argava Commission. The result pointed to Marcos' Chief of Staff, General Fabian Ver, General Proper Olivas, Brigadier General Lader Custodia, and the other commissioned and non-commissioned officers of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, or AFT. Later, to the nation's dismay, they were all acquitted by the Sandiganbayan, which was presided over by Justice Manuel Pamaran for lack of conclusive evidence. Ninoy Aquino's funeral procession took 11 hours from Quezon City to the Memorial Park in Parañaque. Hundreds of thousands attended the procession, which observers described as more a protest march than a funeral procession. In the following months, rallies and mass actions were held, brazenly challenging Marcos to step down, and demonstrators bravely faced the police, who were armed with water cannons, tear gas, and other crowd dispersal weapons. The opposition led the mass protest, joined with the Catholic Church, the emboldened middle-class elements, the business sectors, members of the military, and eased out members of the Marcos administration. For the first time, the anti-Marcos movement was characterized by people across socio-economic classes dominated by moderates. Before 1983, the protest movement was dominated by left or left-leaning sectors, mostly from the basic sectors of society like the workers, peasant, urban poor, and lower middle class. With this development, the stages for Marcos' exit had been set. The 1986 snap election. From 1983, a new wave of protest rallies called Parliament of the State rocked Manila and other cities like Cebu, Davao, and Iloilo. Although Marcos' term was yet to end in June 1987, the protesters asked him to resign and hold an early election, as it was rumored that he had just undergone a kidney transplant. As the call of the people grew louder each day, Young officers within the AFT itself began airing their complaints. The U.S., with its interest in the Philippines, especially in its military facilities, was also disturbed and was accused assassins getting out of prisons. The U.S. began pursuing Marcos for an early election. Thus, quite suddenly, Marcos announced that he was ready for snap presidential election on February 7, 1986. His action surprised his enemies that day. So, Corazon Cory Aquino, widowed of Ninoy Aquino, was the opposition's candidate for president, with Salvador H. Laurel as her vice president. To ensure a clean and fair counting of votes, concerned businessmen and other cause-oriented groups organized the National Movement for Free Election, or NAMREL, or NAMREL. People fiercely and bravely protected their ballots. Initial count by the Comelec showed Marcos leading a 1.2 million votes, which was contrary to the overall NAMFREL tally that gave Cory and Doy a consistent lead. Finally, on the second day after the election, 38 computer programmers of the Comelec walked out in the protest of the Comelec's attempt to manipulate the result shown in the rally board. So this further enraged the people, caused massive rallies to be held in Makati. On February 20, 1986, Marcos was declared president-elect along with Arturo Tolentino as a vice president. On the same day, Cory, in a People's Victory rally at Rizal Park, called for civil disobedience. According to NAMFREL's tally, Aquino's finally votes number 7,835,070 over Marcos 7,053,086. So, people power at EDSA. The event on February 22, 1986 triggered the downfall of the Marcos government in an unsuspected move by Juan Ponce Enrile, then Secretary of National Defense, and Fidel V. Ramos, a vice chief of staff, who defected and severed their ties with Marcos. As long as later events revealed, the plan coped the attack by the Reform Armed Force Movement, or RAM, organized by officers under Secretary Enrile, was discovered. That day, they were held up inside Camp Aguinaldo, ready to fight to the end. General Marcos, joining the strengthened their morale. General Ver's forces were ready to deal with the rebel soldiers and officers when Cardinal Sin appeared over the radio to help protect the soldiers at Camp Aguinaldo from sure annihilation, and to the people answered, and in the next 2 days the whole nation and perhaps the whole world was astonished with what they saw: the civilians protecting the military instead of the other way around. Prayers, flowers, bread, and drinks offered by the people stopped the attacking Marcos soldiers, who were aboard trucks and tanks. Every inch of Epifanio de los Santos Avenue, EDSA, was occupied by people from all walks of life. They could have been dispersed, but it would entail tanks and vehicles trampling or running over warm bodies, which by then numbered over 1 million. And the climax of the event came when crowds and instead landed the helicopter to join the People Power Revolution at EDSA. On the morning of February 23, 1986, the oath-taking of Marcos as newly elected president was hastily stopped, and the radio stations were captured by the rebel soldiers who were on their way to Malacanang. The U.S. government offered to help Marcos and his family along with the crony Danding Coangco to flee to Hawaii to escape the wrath of the avenging horde. That's all. Thank you.